You know how fast you were going?
What? How fast you were going?
I don't know. 10?
8.
Be advised, this is an explicit podcast, so if you're easily offended, get your panties twisted into a knot, turn this off before you get butthurt and mad, start to cry, have to run to your safe space. All opinions are those of the host and his guest and do not reflect the opinions of any government agency. Welcome to another episode of Motor Cop Chronicles podcast. Y'all excuse my voice if I sound different. Got diagnosed with COVID past Tuesday. Yes, past Tuesday. And it kicked my ass pretty good for quite a few days. Just getting back on my feet. If anybody noticed that we didn't put out a Wednesday midweek news report, that was because I was lying in the bed thinking to myself that I was going to die. So that's why I didn't do a podcast. So, but I didn't die. I'm back up at it. I'm not 100% yet, but I'm getting there close to it. Today we have a very, very special guest, a nice young lady who seems pretty much accomplished in her life so far too. Let's welcome Miss Bridget. I'm going to mess it up. I know I am. Say your last name for me, babe.
Truxillo.
Truxillo, that's it. She just told me that, and I got COVID right now and forgot. Just told me that like 30 seconds ago. So welcome to
Bridget. Yeah. That's fine.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I know you're not in law enforcement anymore. You how many years did you do in law enforcement?
About 4.5 long years. So nowhere near as long as you have or many people listening have, but certainly felt long enough.
Yeah, but you kind of went 100% when you hit the ground. You didn't.
I did.
You didn't do the long route. Like, I'm going to do patrol for about 5, 6, 10 years. I'm going to do work here, and then you kind of just hit the ground and went, I don't know what, straight into
I did
narcs or something like that.
It was pretty soon after. In less than a year, I went to the undercover narcotics unit and joke around that. So I spent the next 3 years buying crack for a living. Also while I was on the narcotics unit, I was also on the SWAT team. So I was the only female member of the SWAT team. I don't think they've had any more females. I would be very surprised if they ever had another female. But yeah, so I did patrol, but then the majority of my time was undercover narcotics and SWAT team. Yes.
Well, congratulations on the SWAT team. I was on a SWAT team for a founding member of a SWAT team when my original department, and I can tell you, everybody out there, it's a lot of work and a lot of hard work. And as much as I'll give some of them guys crap and stuff like that, because I was getting tongue tied. It's because I was there and did it, and I know how hard it is to do it, especially smaller departments. That's not a full-time SWAT. So you're working patrol or detective, plus you're doing the special response team stuff, and that's just all that much more training you have to go through. So
a lot of training. Yeah.
And I'll give it to you this: when I first started, of course, nobody knew who I was, so they put me with a narcotics guy for a couple nights, and they had me going out and doing buys. Back then it was crack, so I was out buying crack, hand to hand, hand to hand, buying crack. And I learned very, very quickly that was not for me. I wasn't scared. I just hated it.
Yeah.
I hated buying dope.
It's gross.
I
mean,
just,
yeah.
so if you did that many years doing it, I mean, and I know guys and girls that love doing narcotics. I did it for like I said, 2 or 3 nights and buying drugs, and I was like, I want out. I don't want anything to do with buying drugs. And of course, I found my niche
Yeah.
writing tickets. So.
Yeah. Because when I was in patrol, I tried to do as many traffic stops as I could so that I could just try and flip that into an investigation. Because the way we trained for traffic stops was that we always walked up to the car. Oh, wait, no, that's not, sorry, opposite. We always would call people back to the car. And so, I don't know how I managed to, so then being able to get into somebody's car to search, it's a lot different if you walk up and maybe you can see, maybe if you see some kind of paraphernalia sitting in the car, you can, use that to get into the car. But I always loved it. I loved loved it. I can't say I loved the drug part, but just the whole concept of the investigation and seeing where it went, I did really like that, much more so than just going out and patrolling, handling whatever, whatever calls came in.
Oh, yeah.
And the area where I worked was Alachua County, Florida, which is where University of Florida is. The city of Gainesville itself, where the college is, I mean, that's a city. But outside of that, the rest of the county is pretty rural. And in patrol, there'd be times when I was just bored out of my mind, because it's either, they say the 80-20 warning, this, but I mean, it's more like 90-10 or 95-5. Like 95% of the time you're bored out of your mind, and 5% of the time it's, all hell's breaking loose.
Yeah,
And
I think that's about right. I think it's about 95-5 usually.
but for the strange days where it's like full moon and Halloween or something, I don't know. But there were days where it was just a shit show the whole shift long. But narcotics, I just liked the more, I don't want to say more proactive nature of it, but I mean, you got information and you worked it as far as you could, and you hopefully got to do some buys, and then hopefully you flipped those people so that you could figure out where it was coming from. And particularly in the areas where they're selling crack, because the neighborhoods are so bad. And the part that would break my heart is we'd get these buys out of homes, and then we'd get the search warrants and go in and get do the search warrants to, always with the goal being to try and flip these people to figure out who they're getting it from. But when you're at that street level, that low level street stuff, you hardly ever go up the chain. And then you see such a revolving door of people. And the saddest part, beyond just that these guys are just going to keep getting arrested over and over and over again, is the kids that would be around that. That always bothered me so bad. We do these search warrants and go into these houses, and the houses are filthy. And, if they have a mattress, it's on the floor. There's no such thing as I don't know, so many times, like, they didn't have a bed frame, that they didn't have sheets on the bed. They didn't have dressers. Their clothes were just piled up on, one end of this bare mattress. And go and search the kitchen, and you open up, the microwave, and there'd be roaches coming out of the microwave. And it's just so heartbreaking. But
5-gallon
so
bucket
there's
in the
definitely
bathroom.
a very what?
Said 5-gallon bucket in the bathroom.
Oh, I didn't see that very often. I did see some really nasty.
Oh, y'all didn't get
homes.
much of that. No, we used to go in houses, crack houses and stuff, and instead of having a toilet there, they just have a 5-gallon bucket that everybody was using.
Well, I mean, I went in some really nasty mobile homes over the years. I think I use the word home loosely. Crack house / whorehouse. I mean, you just walk in, just didn't want to touch anything. Thankfully, that was I remember one of those we went in. It was in the middle of nowhere. For some reason, I don't remember why we executed the search warrant during the day. Normally, we don't do that. We do it at night, for the element of surprise. And there was these just crack whores there, and I was the only female, so I got the honorable duty of, searching any females we came across. And then I had that particular time I had to help transport to the jail. So it was a nasty mobile home. And then I got out of the searching duties because I had to help transport these chicks to the jail because there were so many of them at this whorehouse that they outnumbered the person who came to transport them. So that was fun. But so yes, I did that. And living in that dirty world of crack, it's just gross. You're right. I mean, and so many sad stories of like whole families being on crack it's just gross. But I mean, the funny thing is I came from a world where, I mean, to this day, I mean, I've never done a drug in my life. I've never even tried weed. And when I went out first day in narcotics unit and they put me in the car to go buy crack, I had no idea what I was doing. But the good thing is, money talks and bullshit walks, as they say. So as long as you got a $20 bill, you can do the job. So I did. So
well, I was going to say unfortunately, but it's not unfortunate. It's unfortunate, period. But crack's not that big anymore.
Yeah, it's way worse things. Well, way worse. I mean, they're all bad, but
now everybody's using fentanyl and heroin and crack was an epidemic. But I remember back in the '90s and stuff when crack was big, we wasn't dealing with the amount of overdoses that we do now with people ODing on this fentanyl and stuff like that. I mean, it's I came across a guy not too long ago. I called out that he was 10-7, which is out of service, dead. And they started getting there, and I mean, I looked and everything, and I said, I'm not a medical person. I'm like, this dude's dead. I couldn't find out they get there. He was almost dead. He was ODing on drugs, but he had crashed his car. I guess you could see where he had been shooting up. He crashed his car. We thought he died at first. We thought he was dead at first from the crash because it was a pretty horrific crash. Couldn't find out he wasn't dead at all. Once they got the paramedics knew what they were looking at because they was that crap they squirt in their nose and stuff like that.
Like stuff I don't know.
It's at the tip of my tongue. Like I said, COVID brain. But
COVID brain.
It's anyway. They hit him with it. Hit him with it. And,
yeah, I know what you're talking about. I can't think of it right now either. But yeah,
they hit him with it,
and the stuff help you come back.
Yeah, and he came back, ruined his high, got pissed off. He ended up running away from escaping out of the hospital or something. We were looking for him later.
Yeah, the fentanyl is bad. I actually shared a video on LinkedIn recently that I found, came across on the news that a rookie cop was searching a car and came across some drugs, just opened it up, and I think he was in training, so his FTO was like, don't stay away from that stuff. Like you could OD just from, just the whiff of it. And sure enough, within seconds, he fell to the ground, and his FTO, had he not had one of those things you're talking about, and I can't think of the name either right now, had he not reversed he would have OD'd and crashed. I mean, he would have died. Because they had to revive him 2 more times on the way to the ER once the ambulance got there, from doing nothing but searching a car, finding something and opening it up. The fentanyl is bad. It is bad.
I mean, just from touching it.
Yeah.
I mean,
yep, because he's had no exposure, and then we've all known somebody in our lives who has been an addict, or know somebody who has a family member that's an addict. And I know 2 people, they were a heroin addict. Both times they got out of rehab and unfortunately decided to go use again, but they thought they were using heroin. Turns out it was laced with fentanyl, and they died because they didn't know fentanyl was in it. That's not what they were buying. Why would people put fentanyl in it anyway? I don't know. But anyway, that fentanyl, it's killing a lot of people, and it's very sad. It's very dangerous for cops. Just like that story I just told. I mean, look me up on LinkedIn, anybody that's listening, and watch that video and just see how quickly this kid, rookie cop, and literally it's seconds from him just seeing a white powder, looking at it. It's bad. So I recommend looking at it just to see, so you can be even more cautious.
Oh, you
I
definitely
mean,
got
one
to
of the
work.
things that you and I have talked about is like, I don't want cops to commit, I'm worried about the mental health of cops, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing now. But I mean, this is just all the things you have to do to protect yourself in this job. And it's exhausting to just think about all the ways you have to protect yourself. But one of them is be very wary of any type of, chemical you see, because if it's fentanyl, you could OD just by catching some whiffs. And it's scary.
Oh yeah, it's like I said. I remember. I always say I'm old now. Back in the day, we back back in the early '90s and stuff when I was doing this and stuff. You didn't think about putting gloves on when you were searching
Mm-mm.
cars and all that stuff
Nope.
like that. And now it's like, first thing you do is glove up before you ever touch anything,
Yeah.
period. And it's just,
I only had gloves if I thought I might have to touch a dead person or, if somebody was bleeding. But usually, you know how that works. Like you have gloves or it's in your car and then you don't have time to stop and run and go get your gloves. I had them and I never used them and never. I would think I would put gloves on when I had to search people, pat people down, because it was just mostly just because they were just gross. People who've been using crack forever are not clean. Um, and then I never even wore. I know guys that would wear the gloves that hopefully would protect them from pin pricks or whatever. Because I used to always say when I would search a female, I would always say, if you better tell me now if you have anything on you that's going to poke me, prick me, or cut me. Tell me right now so that we can get it out. Because if you don't, I'm going to lose my shit on you.
yeah,
And I didn't.
I had some like
But
leather
that
gloves.
really freaked me out, is all those nasty needles they would have. And like, I remember one girl is at this crack house that just talked about this, and I had to search her. I said, tell me right now, anything on you that's going to poke me, stick me, or cut me, tell me right now. And I won't charge you with it. Just tell me. She didn't say anything. I search her, I tell her to grab her bra and pull her bra out, and 2 knives drop out of her bra. Like, you crazy. Ugh. She was nasty. Um, she had lots of choice words for me when I took her to jail that day.
I had some of them
Um,
leather gloves that had the lining in it that was
mm-hmm.
like puncture proof against
Yep.
knives and needles and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, back in those days too, AIDS was like a really, really was
Mm-hmm.
big thing. I mean, if you caught it back then, it was a death sentence.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. I remember one of the guys I worked with, they thought he had gotten exposed to a suspect who was HIV positive. And so they had to put him on all that medicine for, I don't remember what it was, but I mean, it wasn't a forever life thing, but they had to put him on something to hopefully help prevent him from becoming HIV positive. And he was out for almost a month, and it was not like it was not fun for him. But yeah, that was the thing then. Now it's so many more things, it seems like.
yeah, it was a big thing. I
Um,
remember the guy missed. I was arresting a guy one time, and like he turned around and spit at me, and
mm,
missed, and he spit at my face, and he was like, said how he was trying to give me AIDS. Come to find out he was HIV positive. Thank God
oh, good
he
Lord.
met. I mean, it was just crazy crap like that.
Yeah. Crazy people in this world. And cops get to see all of it. That's what drives me crazy about people will say, you know, people who have an opinion about law enforcement who have no idea whatsoever what law enforcement deals with on a regular, daily, all the time basis. I mean, even though I didn't do patrol, I lived in the drug world for 3 years. I mean, the crap you see, the drugs you see, the people that are on the drugs, the people who wanted to be our snitch so that they wouldn't get arrested, so that they could, and you're not supposed to call them that, it's just call them confidential informants. Um, but I remember one time we used this girl, and sometimes they come in and they seem like they're coming in voluntarily. So you're always a little bit suspect of that, like why you're here, who are you reporting on, why are you doing this? Because sometimes they're just like a pissed off neighbor, want this stuff, like something's coming in their neighborhood, or a bad neighbor moved in the neighborhood, and all of a sudden they have drug trafficking they did before, and they want to get rid of it. But so those are good reasons. But I mean, there's this one lady came in, and I should never, like, why are you snitching on these people? Like, I feel like if I go in with you to buy these drugs, like, she made me nervous, and not everything made me nervous. as a cop. But, you know, every once in a while you're doing something, you get that feeling. And she was one of the few where a couple of times I was going in with her. One time I canceled it. I called my lieutenant and I was like, I'm not doing this. And he says, okay, that's fine. You don't have to, but why? And I said, something's off with her, you know, and they always respected that, thankfully. But then she fell off the radar. And one day I was driving home and, you know, I had an undercover car and I pull over and I was like, hey, come over here. And it took her a minute to realize who I was. And when she walked over, I was like, oh my man, she is off the wagon for sure. But, I mean, it's just sad to see the world you've lived in. You've been a cop, what, for 20 something years now?
Coming up on, 26,
and in many ways
years.
You might think, it doesn't, you know, I've seen it all. It doesn't affect me, but it does. It does affect you. It affects your outlook on life, on people, on your, you know, like whether or not you are in tune with your emotions or not. And in some ways that is compounding stress, even if you don't feel like you're undergoing any type of stress, but you are, and all cops are. And the more that compounds, the more, like, ultimately the body will find a way to release that stress. And that's what I do now, is I just want to provide training and resources and tools and tips for cops to find something that resonates with them, that makes them feel happy, so that they can feel the happiness. And as long, to me, if you're feeling happiness and you're not holding on to that stress, certainly go see a therapist if you feel like you're, you know, I think most cops should see therapists regularly. But to combat that compounding and just, yeah, every single time it's just more stress and more stress and more stress, even if it's just little bitty additions, that all is, it will matter someday. I mean, we've all known too many cops that they retire, and the month after they retire they die. Well, that sucks. Like, that's supposed to be like the, you know, the fun time of your life. Like, you finally retire and you can do whatever you want to do, and then you die because you've just dealt with too much crap for 20 something 30 something years. And I don't want that to happen. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. But
people don't realize that everybody's like, oh, these cops are so cynical, or they're cold-hearted, or they're this or that. Mm-hmm. When you live in a world, or you work in a world, which I can say, you know, most cops do 12-hour shifts or whatever. So, I mean, most everybody, period, spends more time at work than they do at home anyway. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you're living in the type of world we get to live in, because you got to think about, I mean, I don't think the general public thinks about it. The people we're dealing with aren't the just general nice people of the world. The nice people don't have the cops called on them. They're not calling the cops for any reason, right, unless they get. Yep. But so 90-something% of the people we deal with are the scum of the earth. And after you do a whole career of dealing with nothing but scum, I will say you have a hard time looking at the general public and automatically distrusting, wondering who's coming at you at what angle, and just it makes life a whole lot difficult. I'm not the same person now that I was when I first started doing this, and you know, when I was 24 years old.
Yeah. Nobody is. Nobody, even in the short amount of time that I was a cop compared to the amount of time you've had in, nobody comes out of law enforcement the same person they were going in. And I remember, I've told this story before, but I remember distinctly. So I was on I was on the SWAT team and on the narcotics unit. A lot of those were the same guys. And we all worked together a lot, even if they weren't also on SWAT. The narcotics guys, all but one of them, well, it was a small narcotics unit, but all but one of them was also on the SWAT team. And when we would get a search warrant, when the narcotics unit would get a search warrant, it's the SWAT team that would execute the search warrant and, you know, break the door down, make sure it's all safe and all. And then the SWAT team would pack up their gear and leave, and narcotics unit would stay. Well, then most of the narcotics unit people just simply changed hats. You know, I would take off my SWAT gear and go put it in my trunk and then bring my notebook back to start the searching or whatever. But, we would, the stuff that you see regularly, that, you know, I guess describe the homes you see, or the the gross things you see. Oh, but this is what I was going to say, that so, being the only female in the narcotics unit and the SWAT team, I get spotlight on everything I do. And so I would always get every mistake I made, I got in big trouble for it. And it gotten to the point where my captain was like, he had called me in to not talk about why I was in trouble, but I think he was worried that I would start to make a stink about it, because he's like, he called me in one day, how are you doing? And I said, I'm fine. I don't really want to get into it, but I will say, like, somebody at some point is going to have to start leaving me alone. Like, just stop. Let me do my job. I know I'm not perfect, but neither are the guys that I'm working with. And stop. Just leave me alone and let me do my job. And he called me another time, and, more trouble supposedly I was getting in. And we were just having a conversation about the job and how everything that you see. And I remember telling him, he's my captain. I said, Captain, honestly, this job, I said, what I realize is that you have to not only deal with all this crap within the agency, but realizing that you have to constantly assume the worst in all the people around you in order to survive. And that, like, I feel like that should happen to people about 4 to 5 years into the job. You start to realize that if you don't do that, either you can be killed, and you don't go home to your family, which is what's important, or one of the people you work with will be killed, or somebody you're trying to protect will be killed. And so, like, especially in narcotics unit, so you're like pulling people over and you want to find the drugs in the car. And then some of these people, dangerous things happen all the time. Domestic violence things are dangerous, all the high liability stuff, traffic stops, domestic violence, but especially traffic stops, you pull people over and you never know who you're pulling over, and you never know what's in the car. And it could be the guy that just got out, doesn't want to go back to prison, and he's out on parole or probation, and he'll do anything to not go back. And that's what you have to assume happens when you pull somebody over. You cannot assume you're going to pull over your sweet little kindergartner, your old kindergarten teacher who just retired and super old, sweet lady. No, you have to assume it's somebody who, protect yourself, go home at the end of the day. And I had a really hard time with that. Once that really settled in, because, like, you can't trust people. And yet I didn't want to live a life where you can't trust people. And so I don't know how you balance. And I still don't. That's one of the reasons I do, is to find balance. That's why I say one of the things my business does is to help cops find balance. And what I mean is, you can't change what the job is. You do need to go into the job protecting yourself and protecting those you were hired to serve. But at the same time, how do you got to balance out who you are as a person and balance out your mental state and find ways to do that so that you can still do what you need to do on the job, but then let it go and go home. And I think that's really hard to do. So that was many years ago, but that was around the time I decided, I think the best way I can do this is I want to leave the sheriff's office, and decided to become an attorney, because I knew that I wanted to come back and give back someday. And so now, I'm able to help from a legal perspective because I'm an attorney. And I've been involved in litigation for 13 years. So I know what it's like to build up a case and in many different ways. And I can go into examples of what I mean by that. But also more important, and not more importantly, but very importantly, is that I want cops to find a way to find that balance and have the conversation where, even if at first you think, oh, that's silly, I'm fine. Great. I'm glad you feel like you're fine, but just listen to what I have to say a few times. And then, okay, well, I might try that meditation you're talking about. My husband calls it that hippy dippy stuff. Try it for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, try it for 3 to 5 minutes for a week, before, after your shift, especially after your shift, and just see if it just helps how you feel a little bit, because you're never going to change what the job is, ever. I mean, you're hired to run towards danger. You're hired to deal with the dredges of society because society wants somebody to be able to do that. That's never going to change. The only thing that you can change is how you are as a person inside. And that's very important to me. And, we talked about it earlier. There are more cops that die by suicide than there are that die from injury, on the job or, in the line of fire. And that should not be the case. We should not be losing more cops from suicide than we should be from the dangers of the job.
Well, a lot of departments, I think, need to make changes on the stigma, because as you know, as I know, a lot of departments, if you're active duty and you come out and you saying you having any kind of messed up thoughts, not even suicidal thoughts, just having, you know, I don't know, some emotional difficulties, whatever you want to call it, the first thing they going to do is give you the rubber stamp.
Yeah.
And so the problem is that my opinion is that you have a lot of cops that would probably come forward and go ask for some help if they didn't think it was going to cost them their career. But
I agree.
Instead, they don't, because they're not going to ruin their career and their families' lives. So they just keep it bottled up inside and stuff like that until one day it's just, I don't know, they just can't handle it or something like that.
I totally agree, especially the guys that have been in it. I mean, like you and the guys that I started with that are still in them, and they're entering their, crossing over that 20-year point or the 25-year point, or like in Florida, I'm not sure how those other states, but like in Florida, you get to that point where you can enter the drop, where you can, earn more some retirement money. And the last thing you want to do is do something to jeopardize your pension and jeopardize the money that you're counting on when you retire. And then the catch-22 is that you've been through all this crap for 20-something, 25-something, 30-something years. And so that you really do need help. But you can't say anything, because the last thing you want is to be fired. And if you're fired, that messes up your pension in some ways. And that depends on where you are and pension fund and all that. But you don't want to go out like that, or even have to worry about what does it affect my retirement. I totally agree. I mean, even my agency, I didn't feel like I had anybody I could go to that I could trust. I did not feel like my agency really had my best interest at heart. It's a huge conflict of interest to have, because the agency has to protect themselves against the things the officers do, while also trying to provide the right kind of tools and resources so that the cops are okay, that hopefully reduce the number of maybe possibly wrong decisions that they might make. And I mean, that's also one of the reasons I started my business, is I know that cops have distrust of their agencies. I felt it when I was a deputy sheriff. And so with my businesses, it gives you, and I'm not the only one out there, a lot of ways you can get help. Like for example, if you had some mental health worries, you can reach out to a lot of people. They don't have anything to do with your agency. A lot of them there's a lot of assistance out there, so that hopefully if you feel like you want help and you don't want it to go through your agency, there's a lot of resources, a lot of information you can find. Same thing with me. I mean, a lot of departments, even if you have you need some type of program to help you with your mental health, they don't want to use it. They don't want to ask for it. They don't want to take advantage of it, because they're afraid it'll paper their file in the wrong way. Also, and it's sad.
Being a cop, sheriff's deputy, law enforcement person, however you want to put it, I've noticed, if you see one of your friends or something you think maybe having a little issue or whatever, man, don't just be the big macho cop, of this whole persona, stigma, whatever everybody wants to have. Talk to your buddy or whatever. I mean, I'm not saying their names. This many, many years ago, had a guy I worked with, was going through a divorce, he was having a little tough time with it. The department put him on leave for a little while he got his crap straight, Well, almost everybody just shunned him. I didn't. He'd probably tell you today, I was one of the few people that stepped up and made sure I called, went and checked on him, went and talked to him and everything else. And everybody else basically turned their back on him because of that. It's like, y'all, everybody out there wants to holler about this thin blue line crap. Okay. Well, if y'all want to holler about the thin blue line crap and say, oh, we're thin blue line, well, you know what? Then that means that person's still part of it when they're having issues too, not just when they're toting the line with you. Too many times, everybody just turns their back on them when something does happen. when people leave the department and change divisions,
Mm-hmm.
people think that, you find out, I've said this before, you find out who your real friends are and who,
Mm-hmm.
who your work acquaintances are. I did one before. I think it said on non-work friends.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's good for law enforcement people to try to have friends that are not cops.
Yep.
I know it's hard, but try to have some
It
that
is.
aren't cops.
Yeah. Yep.
Don't hang out with people that you work with, just that you work with all the time when you're off. Because I'm gonna tell you,
Mm-hmm.
whenever you retire, get fired, quit, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
whatever department
Mm-hmm.
which you're with, you probably experienced this once you quit being in law enforcement. You probably had a couple of people that stayed in touch with you, but I guarantee you, the majority of them had nothing to do with you after a while. Like they didn't even know who you
No, no,
were
my
anymore.
leaving the sheriff's office was not a good experience in many ways. I It was horrible. I had a really bad relationship with my sergeant and my lieutenant, and I felt like, oh, it was not good. I didn't talk with hardly anybody. I come back later and find out there's like rumors about a bunch of shit I didn't even. I mean, it was just not good. So yeah, law enforcement. It's kind of what I'm saying about how you see so much bad stuff, and if you're not doing something for yourself to feel the good stuff, and I mean like good stuff could be as simple as like just having a daily routine that outside of work to help you like unwind after work, or and to find balance and joy, and like you say, like hanging out with some people outside of work that don't have anything to do with law enforcement, so you're not talking the talk, or I used to hang out with the guys from SWAT a lot, and like in hindsight, I was doing that because I wanted to be a valued member of the team, and I felt like, usually we were having fun, but looking, hindsight 2020, what I should have done is I can be a valuable team member, do my job, work really hard, and then do some of the social things we would do as a team. But that didn't need to be all that I did, and that probably would have helped me survive, or maybe last longer than I did, in dealing with the struggles of being the only female on the team, or and just a difficult supervisor or whatever, because um, life's all about balance, and it's not so I tell people a lot, and what I'm doing now is I have a wellness training program, and it's something you don't like just go take a course and check the box and you're done. No, this is a lifelong journey, especially you're in law enforcement for your career, and like you say, you spend more time at your work than you do anything else, to find a way to find balance. But your balance doesn't just come from work; it's your home life and your friend life and your and then there's, what are you doing for yourself? Are you exercising? How are you eating? Are you reading? Are you like I like to read, so if I can find some time to read, it doesn't have to be every day, then that helps me deal with my work, my husband, my kids. Like, it helps me balance all of that. And I'm starting a new business, which is really hard, and it seems very isolating and lonely sometimes. But then I can go hang out with my friend who has nothing to do with my business and is not in the law enforcement world at all, and I feel so happy hanging out with her that when I come back to do this hard work, then it feels more like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Like, you just tackle it one piece at a time. And definitely feel like that's a very good piece of advice you just said, and I'm sure you learned it the hard way. Is you gotta socialize with people outside of your shift, socialize with people outside of law enforcement, because it is a very secular world anyway. And I think it's important to be around people who aren't tainted by everything that cops see, and to hear some good, and be around some optimists every once in a while, because cops are not optimists. Cops are definitely pessimists. I call it the Debbie Downers, or the poly positives. Find some poly positives, because you'll find plenty of Debbie Downers when you go to work.
Oh yeah, it's just like, well, everybody sees the negative of everybody.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
being in law enforcement, like I said, I think I've said it before also, do not, I don't want to word it correctly. Your badge on your chest does not define
Right.
who you are as an individual. And the problem
Right.
is after you have that uniform on and that badge, and you strap up every day to go to work, you put a gun on, you do all this other crap, and once a lot of these people, once you're not in law enforcement anymore, it's like, and I can say I experienced it for a short period of time. I mean, I had a quick transition from one department to the other when there was a couple weeks there, but mine was like unexpected. Like I said, I switched jobs unexpectedly. And, you know, at first, I mean, I thank God my wife listened to me, you know, because, I mean, I went through a little depression there because I was like, I'd been doing this 20-something years, and next thing you know, here I am. I don't know who I am anymore, which I'm always going to be me. So, I mean, being a cop, you can't think that badge and that uniform defines who you are.
Yeah.
You define.
I totally agree.
You need to define who the badge is.
I used to call that the either the little man syndrome, and I don't mean that to be sexist, or the Napoleon complex. Like, I just feel like, you just get to Napoleon, like he's a little guy, and he had his uniform, and you always see pictures of Napoleon and have his hand is always in his sash, and he's like statured, and I felt like he's always trying to overcome the fact that he was small and like overcome something. And, I definitely worked with plenty of guys that you could definitely tell that there was no separation between who they were on their job and with that badge and gun and with that certification. Because, you graduate the police academy, that doesn't make you a cop. You have to have an agency that gives you your credentials or your certification. I mean, mostly your credentials. And so, like, I still have my sheriff's office badge, but that doesn't mean Jack-Ola without the certifications or the credentials, that my sheriff gave me.
Yeah.
And certainly turning that in, and especially like coming right out of narcotics unit and SWAT, and very intense, high energy, fast paced law enforcement type jobs. I mean, I had all the guns, we got all the training, we train a lot, and then you go back into just civilian world and think, first of all, you think, well, if something happens now, what am I supposed to do? I don't have my MP5 or my Benelli shotgun yes, I can go buy all those guns, but I mean, it's when you're in law enforcement, you have the power to use those things more so, and that's a deeper legal discussion, but like more so than just regular old citizens. And certainly that's a very heavy, I don't know, I would call it a power trip. I mean, it's hard to come off of that, which is another reason why you should, like, on the one hand, I say you should find balance in life so that you can find the happiness, because it's hard to find happiness in the job in law enforcement all the time, because you're dealing with so many bad things. On another side, you need the balance because, like you say, like, you've got to be able to you're more than just the job. And I think if you can get too tied up in who you are as a cop and the power that you have as a cop, I mean, you have the power to, potentially take away life. You have the power to take away people's constitutional freedoms. And there are very few jobs in this country that allow you to take away somebody's constitutional freedoms. I mean, I remember something as simple as the first time I was in field training, and the first 3 months you're riding along, seeing what they do. And then the second 3 months you you switch over and I'm driving. And then the third 3 months, I think it's that long. Maybe not. No, it's not that long. But the middle phase is when you start to do it and they are guiding you. And then the third phase is you're doing it all, and they'll just critique you in case you're really making big mistakes. But I remember my first traffic stop. It was in Gainesville, and it was a football game weekend, so it was kind of quiet in the morning, but it was getting ready to be crazy because the game was that night. And some guy rolled through a stop sign, and I looked to my field training deputy, and I was like, "Did you see that?" He said, "See what?" I said, "I think that guy just ran the stop sign." And he said, "What are you going to do about it?" I said, "Well, can I stop him?" And he said, "I don't know. Can you?" I was like, "Well, can I stop him?" And he said, "I don't know. Can you?" And I was like, "I think I can." He's like, "Well, then go stop him." I'm like, I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, Like, I'm going to turn my lights and sirens on, and this person has to listen to me. And if he runs from me, I get to arrest him. And like, I have the power to tell this guy he is no longer free to move about until I do what I need to do. And that, I maybe that doesn't happen to all cops, but it did to me. I like, holy crap, I can stop him and he's not allowed to go for now. I can give him a ticket, and if he ignores all of it, ultimately he could get arrested, which is taking away a freedom. Like, I just found that to be heavy, and I think all cops should remember that that's a heavy duty, a heavy burden to bear, because you should never take it lightly, ever. And I think that when you do start to take it lightly is when mistakes can be made. Decisions we've all seen them. I don't need to air people's bad mistakes because the media does that plenty, and nobody's perfect. And I think most cops do make all the right decisions almost all the time. But I think that balance is so important. It's so important to have balance outside of law enforcement, to have, like you say, friends outside of law enforcement. But it's also really important to do the internal work to know who you are as a person, and to literally sit there and say, and with a journal, and you can call that hippy dippy stuff if you want to, but I'm not kidding when I say you should sit down and write down, say, who am I besides being a cop, and write it down. And I bet you there would be a lot of cops who would say, let's say, like, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, but who you are, if you're not a cop tomorrow, who are you? Because this job's just a job. You could get fired tomorrow for some stupid reason. Maybe you could sue and get your job back, but you could get fired tomorrow. All of you, maybe except for some of these, especially in the South where we're at will states like you and I, you can be fired tomorrow. You might have some a grievance process to go through your union, but you'd have to fight to get that job back, and it's no guarantee you'd get it back.
Well, I work for a sheriff's office, and if you're from the South, you ought to know I'm an at-will employee of the sheriff.
Yeah.
I mean, I have zero. We don't have a union or nothing like that. Basically, I could go to work and the sheriff could walk in and say, you know what? I don't like your haircut. You're fired. I don't like your cologne. You're fired.
Then you're out.
And I'm gone. There's nothing I can do. There's nobody I can sue or nothing like that. There's nothing I can do about it.
Call me if it happens, and maybe we'll figure out if we can sue somebody.
I'm just saying, but a lot of department. A lot of cops are civil service or PD guys.
Yep.
They have that civil service protection. Like I said, I've been an at-will employee now for coming up on 27 years or so.
Yep.
And at-will employee.
No, you're right.
And it's I tell the guys all the time. I'm like, I've told guys, and when I used to FTO guys, I'm like, they're like, oh, this, that. I'm like, look, let me explain something to you. No one is untouchable. I don't care.
No one.
You know what? This department was functioning before you got here. It's going to function after you leave. You were a number. Whatever your badge number is, that's your number. And
that's it.
I said so.
I was 696. I was uniform is patrol U69. That was Oscar 696 when I was in narcotics, and that was it. And then when I'm gone, that's it. It doesn't matter anymore.
And I guarantee you, probably in the department, somebody's got that same number now, and they're still going. And but I've told people, especially young ones, I've seen law enforcement career destroy marriages.
Oh yeah.
I'm not just
Way
saying for cheating or anything else. I'm saying I've watched it destroy marriages for the simple fact of you spend all your time at work. If they call, you're always the first one to volunteer for something. You're always doing the free stuff, the volunteer stuff, all this stuff like that. And I try to tell them, I'm like, that fine and dandy. I said, but it's not going to do you no good. If you're trying to advance that way, it may help a little bit, I'm going to say, because out of the 100 attaboy pats you get on the back, that one fuck up that you do, they're going to forget about them 100 good things you did.
Yeah. Unfortunately, because also most businesses on the planet don't manage people well, but certainly very few law enforcement agencies have good leadership. And I'm not trying to offend anybody in leadership that's out there, but it's just not, you don't get training on it. I mean, I was lucky enough in my 20s, I had unbelievable job where I got this amazing leadership training. And I was 21 years old at a job at a health club, and I was getting trained on the 7 habits of highly effective people and how you can most effectively manage your own life and like my life, and then how I can most effectively manage interactions with other people in a, hopefully a positive way. And I mean, that was profound. I had that training before I ever became a cop. And I mean, just unfortunately, there are very few people in leadership and law enforcement that get that kind of training. Very few sheriffs, constables, chiefs that have that training who instill that in their staff from the top down. And so, yeah, you get horrible leadership supervisors and managers. And I mean, I had horrible supervisors. I mean, not all horrible. I mean, my captain, when I left, he was captain, but he was lieutenant over patrol, and he became, anyway, doesn't matter. He and I stayed in touch. I mean, he's retired now. He's still in Florida. I mean, we probably talk once a year. So I mean, they weren't all bad. And he was a big proponent of mine. If it hadn't been for him, they never would have put me on SWAT team, which my lieutenant reminded me of on a regular basis. But there were some good ones, but I think that was more luck than anything. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's no guarantee. So that's all the more reason that you need to find balance in life in so many ways. And that's like taking a break from job, take the vacation. Don't ever let your vacation run out. Take the vacation. And like, if you like to fish, go out and fish, because you're out fishing, you can't be loud. You're just thinking about fishing, and you're probably thinking about other things, and you're, hippy dippy communing with nature. And I don't care, but you are. If you're out fishing, that means you're in nature, and that feeds your soul. Do the things that feed you. I mean, what I've done with my business is I've created a program, which I'm actually going to announce. It's starting in September. Is it gives you, it teaches you not the ways to do that, because a lot of, like, the way that I recharge me is a lot different than you recharge you. But it gives you lots of different ways to do that. But then a lot of talk and training on, it's really why it's so important that you do that for yourself, so that not only can you come out of this job happy, healthy, balanced, but that you make the right decisions on the job, and then you can make the right decisions off the job, and you're not letting the job completely consume who you are. And I think a lot of people can let their jobs consume them, whether it's law enforcement or not. It's just that the extremes that come along with law enforcement make that so much more important. And what my program does is to teach people is, you don't say, oh, I'm going to eat this carrot today so that and then check, I don't have to eat a carrot again for the rest of my life. No, we all know that to be healthy as you age, you have to eat healthy for the rest of your life. So that, I want to eat healthy. One of the reasons is so that I can be active and healthy when my kids grow. And then when I have, when they get out of the house, and then hopefully have grandkids someday, I want to be able to play with my grandkids. I don't want to be laid up somewhere because didn't take care of myself and can't move around. But it's to teach that it's a journey. And that doesn't have to be it's not a negative thing to say you should work on yourself, but work on yourself all the time, because that also evolves. The way that I need to work on myself now in my 40s is not the same that I would have, or that I did in my 20s when I was single with no kids and, gung-ho with my career. And I'm still gung-ho in my career, different ways. But you know what I'm saying is that life evolves and you evolve with it. And what my training does is to teach people the ways that you can do that for yourself, but that includes not just eat well. It's not just exercise. It's not just, hey, go have that lunch date with a friend so that you can, recharge, but the importance of, what the effects of that are, and to remind people of it all the time. Because I know I can be reminded. I need to be reminded regularly of lots of different things, so that it's not something that falls off my radar, so that I stop taking care of myself in certain ways. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you in so many ways that there needs to be that. I mean, basically what we're saying is that the job of law enforcement is so hard, but for so many different reasons, and not just because of what they see. It's that, everything we've just talked about. So.
Oh no, it's a lot of different aspects of it. I will say this: the department I work for now. The sheriff I work for, he is phenomenal. I mean, me working for a sheriff's office, and he allows me to do this.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of, like I said, it's hard for me to get guessed. A lot of not a lot of law enforcement, period. PD and, or however, wherever they work, sheriffs, whatever. I've talked to a lot of them. They're like, I'd love to do it. I get fired in a heartbeat if I even thought about doing that. So,
Yep.
I mean, and I've seen this man that I work for now. He's way compassionate to his employees. I got to say one thing that I lucked out with the person I work for now.
Mm-hmm.
But I've worked for some, just regular supervisors before in other departments and stuff like that. I've had some great supervisors, and I've had other supervisors that sucked ass. And
me too.
and y'all out there ever do decide to become a supervisor, a sergeant, lieutenants, captains, corporals, I don't know how some departments work. I say, remember, if you make rank and you become somebody's supervisor, hopefully they'll send you to some kind of leadership classes.
Yeah.
And don't forget that you used to be that grunt too. And don't forget how you used to feel when that sergeant or that lieutenant was chewing up in your ass, and especially when you didn't know you didn't do wrong or something like that. But, if I had some guys, I'm pretty sure the guys that when I was a sergeant would come and probably tell you that I'd jump some ass if I had to, but I took a lot of ass chewings and never told them about it because I didn't think that they did anything wrong.
Yep.
So if you ever become a supervisor, remember that just because you got stripes or chevrons or whatever on your shoulders and stuff like that, don't forget where the hell you came from when you're out there doing it. Those people are looking up to you to have their back, and if you lose the respect of the people working under you, you're done. You're done, and you're a shitty supervisor.
To me, one of the things with that too, and that's something that through my program I will offer, and I'll continually talk about and bring up. But I think all humans are hungry for knowledge. People just want to know. They want to know how to do their job so that they can do their job well. Very few people. I mean, unfortunately, in law enforcement, you deal with people who don't have that desire. They don't want to do well. They want to do harm. But those people exist. But hopefully none of the people that want to do harm are working at your law enforcement agency. So let's just assume that everybody that we're working with is, wanting to do well, and they want to work hard. They want to do their job the right way. They don't want to make mistakes or, heaven forbid, maybe violate somebody's rights. Nobody wants to do that. And the best supervisors are the ones that are continually provide them feedback. And I don't care. I mean, you probably wouldn't like it if some new supervisor came in, and you've been doing this a long time, but I mean, I'm mostly talking about the newer people. And when I say newer, I mean 4 year, 5 year, 6 year, 7 year, or you change departments and you go from patrol to detective. I mean, that's totally different. And how you do the job and how you, even how you evaluate cases but everybody always wants to know how to do the job so that they can do the job right. And I don't think enough, I never did. I never had enough supervisors really saying, okay, this is how we're going to do this case. You come in the narcotics unit, just because you go in the narcotics unit doesn't mean you know how to do the job. And I know how to work hard, but that doesn't, if my sergeant wants me to do a job in a certain way, or my lieutenant has a particular method for the madness, great. Just I've always said, all I need to know is just tell me the rules of the game and I can play the game. And I don't mean game in gamemanship or, being sneaky. I just mean, if you want to play basketball, all you need to know is that the rules of basketball. You can't foul. You can't, you can be really successful at basketball if you follow the rules of the game. And I don't think enough supervisors ever think about that. Go on your give your patrol guys some feedback, and including positive feedback. That makes so much of a difference. Or if you explain something and to try and tell them why. And unfortunately, there's some politics involved in law enforcement, so you might always get a good why behind it, especially, I think, when you have a chief instead of a sheriff.
Well, if anybody has a supervisor, or if you are a supervisor, and you're more worried about covering your own ass,
that's
and
bad.
not covering your people's ass,
Mm-hmm.
quit being a supervisor.
I agree.
Stop worrying about your own ass.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a supervisor, your first priority should be making sure you're taking care of your people. If it comes down to your ass on that chopping block, then that's what your ass needs to be at, because that's the job title you took. But I would have never thrown any of my people under the bus to keep my ass out of a bind or a sling.
Yeah. My most difficult sergeant was, I could just never figure out how to do right by him. I literally would go to work saying, okay, the job shift would be awful. I'd go home the next day. Okay, I'm gonna do this. Today's gonna be. Today I'm gonna do a good job. Today I'm gonna do a good job. And it just never worked. And I just wish there could have been a way for us to sit down and say, if I could have, go back to myself then, and I'd sit down with him and say, okay, Sarge, I want to figure out how to do this job in a way that you think I should do the job. And apparently we're not on the same page, because I just could never do anything right by him. And it was awful. And
maybe he was intimidated by you, that you scared you were going to start doing a better job and take his job or something. I mean,
well, they all knew I was gonna leave at some point, but anyway, but it was that part. Like, just hear me when I say that, because if you have somebody on your shift that might be making a lot of mistakes, number one, it could be, do they really know how to, like, maybe they had a really horrible training deputy or officer. I mean, my first training officer was not great. I really hope he never listens to me say that, because he's a fine person. But all he did was complain about life. He didn't really teach me how to do the job. And then my second training deputy was fantastic. And then I'm just a very proactive person anyway. So I'm going to jump in, and I really want to learn it on my own. I want to make sure I'm doing it well. But at the same time, I think if any supervisor out there, if you have somebody on your shift that's it seems like all they ever do is everything wrong. I mean, have you ever stopped to consider, do they really know how to do it right? And of course, then if you take the time to really show them how to do it right, and they're still making the mistakes, then you need to make sure you're documenting that, and then get rid of them, because this is not a job where if you make a mistake, you're going to get a paper cut. This is a job where if you make a mistake, we've all seen what those mistakes can be. And considering that those can be violating somebody's constitutional rights, I mean, that's a big deal. And or hurting somebody, or getting themselves hurt, or getting. I told a girl one time,
law enforcement make mistakes, people can die.
Right.
I mean, with the Dante Wright thing not too long ago.
Yeah.
That lady made a mistake. Thought she had her taser out, had her gun out. She made a mistake.
And that's heartbreaking.
I mean, when you have a job like we have, and you have to make life and death decisions in split seconds, you can't make mistakes. You
can't. And we're all human, and I'm not justifying what happened with that. My heart breaks for that lady. My heart breaks for the family that lost someone from that. It's a horrible situation all the way around. And I'm sure you probably stop me if you've heard this story, or just tell me if you've heard this story, but it's true. There's a guy that, I don't know him, but I've just heard the story, that he used to train, when you're in the academy, or when you do your ever so often self-defense certification courses on the job or whatever, that you train to disarm somebody. And you train, and when you train for that stuff, just like when you're on SWAT, you train for something and you do it over and over and over and over again, so that when you need to use that skill, you can use it without thinking about it. So they're training on disarming. They get in the stance, and they disarm the guy. They where you get the gun and you're flipping around, and they give it back to the guy and you do it again. They train, they disarm and flip the gun around and get it away from the bad guy or your training officer, and then you give it back, and you do that over and over and over again. Well, this guy, one of the guys that had done that, gets into an actual real life scenario where he was fighting a guy. The bad guy, real life bad guy, got his gun, his duty off the weapon, and then he managed to get it back. He disarmed him, got the gun back, gave it back to the bad guy, because that's all he had ever trained to do, was disarm, give it back, and do it again. Disarm, give it back, and do it again. And that's what his brain automatically did, was
muscle memory.
Give it back. So I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying I don't think people get. I mean, I was trained on a taser. My training for a taser was, I got tased once, and then I got my taser. But we never got training on scenarios of when do you pull your gun or when do you pull your taser. I've seen some really great trainings come out since then that will train officers on that mentality, like here's one explanation for why that happened, which is that normally when the shit hits the fan, you're grabbing your gun, but you get no training on when the shit hits the fan, you're grabbing your taser. I mean, maybe some agencies do, but by far you qualify on your gun. You train on your gun. And I just think that's something to consider in those situations. I'm not saying, like I said, it's a horrible situation. That lady's on trial for murder, which is awful. But it's just something to consider. And I think it's something for the public to consider. Like, nobody knows what that's like unless, there's just so many different things that go into training.
Well, in today's society,
mindset, gear, routine, habit, it all makes a difference.
In today's society, with all the body cameras, everybody with cell phone cameras and everything else, everything, of course, is being videotaped now, and everybody, the armchair,
I got out.
Everybody gonna sit there and they have a week to sit there and watch the video over and over and over and over again. And people don't think
how convenient for you that you get to watch it when somebody's,
and then slow it down and everything else. Yep. You're not there. You're not the one there seeing a black object come out of somebody's pocket in their hand coming into motion towards you, and you have a millisecond to think, all right, is it a gun? Is it a cell phone? People don't realize.
People have no idea.
That's why I wish they would make all these news reporters, all these damn politicians, and all this stuff like that go through shoot, don't shoot scenarios with simunition type rounds.
I totally agree.
And saying, okay, here we go. Here's a situation. You pulled this person over, or you got called here for a situation, and let them go through it. I'm not a gambling person, but I guarantee you about 99% of them would fail miserably.
Well, you fail, and then you start to get shot by those little paint pellets, and that hurts. And this, people see it on movies, but somebody's shooting at you, or when you're shooting back, the number of times I was shot in my fingers, because my fingers hold the gun. And so people aren't necessarily aiming at me. They're aiming at the threat. The threat is the gun. And the times that I got shot on my fingers hurt so bad. I mean, and, I was the only female, that on the team. And so there'd be times when we had just done a bunch of SWAT training and we'd done that. And everybody gets shot because, that's what training's for, to learn how to clear something better. And some of the ladies at the sheriff's office, one time I had like scars on my arm, I had scrapes and bruises, and she looked at me and she goes, "Bridget, oh my gosh, what are they doing to you?" And I'm like, "Oh, come on, the same thing as the guys. They don't get any. I don't want to do anything different than they're doing." And I like, "Don't worry about it. It's fine." But they let the moms. Our secretary in our narcotics unit, we called her mom. I walked in one day and she goes, "Bridget, what are they doing to you?" I'm like, "Well, they're not doing anything to me. They're not doing it to the guys, and that's the way it should be." But guarantee I won't do whatever that thing is again, like clearing stairwells or something, where clearing stairwells were the most nerve-wracking experience to me. Because you can be shot from so many different angles in a stairwell.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so ultimately my mission in life, I mean, I'm 46 years old and I finally figured out what I want to do in life. And what I do in life is I combine 20 plus 25 years of training and experience to give back to law enforcement so that all you guys can feel just a little bit happier, enjoy your life a little bit more, hug your babies another day.
What's the name of your?
It's called Protective Wellness. And the way the business works is it's a membership base, and that offers three main things: wellness training, legal support, and community. The wellness training is that each month you get live and some recorded wellness topics. The legal support is that each month you'll get from me a short video on a legal topic that I think will help alleviate worry you have on the job. But also, as a member, you get access to me or an attorney like me, which is an attorney that's also been a cop, and you can get legal advice. So all you have to do is book an appointment, and you get a one-on-one legal consultation on any legal subject. So somebody reached out to me the other day, and it's like, hey, my boyfriend's having a child custody issue. I'm like, okay, well, the way that works is that I can give advice. I can, give you some guidance on it. So it's basically like having your own general counsel set aside for you if you need it. And then community, because we'll engage in a lot of conversations to help support. One of the things I'm passionate about is helping support women in law enforcement, to help guide them through the things that I experienced on the job. But yeah, the company is called Protective Wellness, and we have our website is myprotectivewellness.com, or you can just Google Protective Wellness. And we're on all social media, so LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. I just started. I don't have any TikTok out there yet because there's only so much social media I can handle at a time.
It definitely gets overwhelming.
Sorry, but also I do have I keep talking about this wellness training. If you go to my website, I have a free download, and it's 7 tactical steps to automate your wellness. So just 7 things to kind of check the box. It's like, if you want to start a wellness routine, here's 7 things, like look at this, and this, and then get it started. And then my program is like actually providing that training on a regular basis. So that's what it is.
Cool deal. All right. Well, we're getting at that point. Don't hang up yet. And I'm gonna get this outro out the way, and I'm gonna get the information from you, like some links or whatever, so I can put it in the show notes. So stand by. I appreciate it. I actually enjoyed it a whole lot. I don't get a lot of serious a lot of the time, and sometimes it's a refreshing to me.
I know, this is so serious. Normally you're goofy and y'all are laughing and making fun, and here I am. I feel like I'm the Debbie Downer.
No. Sometimes it makes
it's important stuff.
Makes me know that, but everybody else knows that I'm just not an idiot all the time. So most of the time I am, but not all the time.
It's that 80-20 rule, right? Or the 95 and 5?
Yeah. So if anybody out there wants to be a guest, like I said, hit me up on Facebook Messenger or email. It's the best way to get in touch with me. Email is the quickest way. I'll probably respond back to you. Any first responder, you don't have to be a cop, of course. And hopefully this Wednesday we will be back on track. My voice will be hopefully be back better. And I'm looking forward to getting back to work too. I'm about to get stir crazy sitting at the house. And remember to watch y'all's back. Watch your back. Stay safe out there, and remember to smile, because the Iceman could always be behind you.